we would like to invite everyone to come together with one, as one heart, one mind, and pray for this beautiful opportunity that we have in front of us to connect with one another, to connect with our mentors, the mentors of the SSP, our Master Jesus, our dear Creator, our God. Giving thanks for this amazing opportunity. First of all, to stop and recharge ourselves, revisiting some good teachings in our lives, learning a little bit more if possible. If anything, to share with one another a happy moment, a moment that we come to relax, to reconnect, and to pay attention to the calling, the teachings of our Master Jesus. This way, we ask, dear Lord, for your guidance during this moment, for your guidance during the moments that we'll have our interactions with one another, so that we can grow and help others grow with what we're about to connect with right now. Asking that this moment is also shared with our brothers and sisters who are not here tonight. May those who will be watching this online also be able to multiply these teachings, and as we send our good vibrations to one another, and so be it. So good afternoon, and why not say good evening, right? For it's pretty soon evening, even though the time changed and now we get to experience more sunlight, more light daylight, right? Or day, if we want to say that way, in our lives. It's a magical moment of the year when we change a little bit like this, and have this increased number of hours of daylight. At least for me, it makes me happy. We can do more outside, right? Experience more of the outside. But happy to be here. Happy to have all of you here as well. I will say that I will kind of be trying to manage things here. I know Daniel is in the background trying to help us as well, but that's why you see two screens here. But to say the least, I like to say that this is I'm really happy to give continuation to this series of talks that we are proposing ourselves to do throughout the year, entitled Christ's Teachings. And today we'll be studying the parable of the sower. Um, every time we come here, we say, it's a special moment, it's a special talk, it's a special message, right? And I'll say it again. This is a very special message, right? Teaching by of our master, and we will see that it repeats itself not only through time, but as you can see here, the parable of the sower also actually are presenting three gospels: the Gospel of Matthew, the Gospel of Mark, and Luke as well. So it's important. It's very important, right? And I towards the end we will see that it is our Master Jesus saying, repeating what has been what was brought to us way before him, right? And it's very interesting how it develops. I often say I'm gonna leave things to the end of our conversation, so we can actually, just to change a little bit here. I often say that I'm going to leave things to the end of the conversation, but there is I use really what we can find online in terms of information about the parable, especially along with spiritism as well, that we can learn from the parable. But there are two relevant books that I would like to bring forth here: the Gospel According to Spiritism, which we'll see a little bit more, and another book by Kaiba Shurto, right? And on the analysis of Kabar Shuto, he actually says that it is one of the most important message of the master because we come in contact with the message, right? What Jesus is bringing to us, and how we can use this parable as well to analyze ourselves. I'll put aside others on how we receive the message, right? What message? The message of God, right? And we'll see a little bit more about this, but I want to put emphasis again into on this because as we're studying, as we're going deeper into these studies, I myself will look at it and say, well, the little that we know, right? And the message is on the gospel too, the gospel according to Spiritism. And it is one of the reasons why also I chose this parable because it's also something that goes along with Kardec in terms of one of the parables that he chose to put on the gospel according to Spiritism to also teach us to become a better individual. So it is important. It is extremely important. And sometimes we think that, oh, it's just a man throwing the seeds around. But it's beyond that, right? It's way beyond this idea of throw some seeds. Hopefully, there will be fruits bearing for that, right? Um, but we'll see a little bit more. But let's start with the actual parable. What does the parable say? This is, again, from chapter Matthew. We're going to use only Matthew. We're not going to explore, hello, welcome. We're not going to explore you can actually see right over here. We're not going to actually explore all three gospel, but we're going to we stick with the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 13. And this is, again, only part of it, and we'll see a little bit more of it. The parable of sowers that says the following: the same day Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. That same day, excuse me, not the same day, that same day Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, let me take a parenthesis here. If we go to this chapter of Matthew, and you will see that the following chapters, it is Jesus on that day working full time. I shouldn't even say that because then we can assume that Jesus worked part time, right? But he was always working, as he said. But there were many other parables and many other teachings also said the same day. So it's like he start one and then he continue and then he continued. So he was very busy that day. He was sitting. I'm thinking that he was sitting on the boat for quite a number of hours, just going through a lot of the teachings, right? And you see this parable, the other parable, this parable. It's really interesting. And again, these are things that I would like to relate to you that I did not know, right? Again, we read these parables and we read these teachings through Spiritism as well, and we're like, never thought about this. Did not know this thing. But he actually kept going. He not only said the parable of the sower, but other parables as well. So it's really interesting how much he said that day. And I can only think that how many people were sitting around and how much they got from them, right? The enlightenment that people were able to receive. But we're going to talk more about that as well. But anyways, so what is the actual parable? He said, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Just change over here. Still, other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 160 or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Again, I got this from Bible Gateway online. You can just Google, and you can really just read whatever version you would like to do. And I like to point out to these things because you see also variations on certain words and certain ways that they put the information online, right? But this is the parable. This is it. And we can just dive into this. But there's more. But let us take a closer look just on this passage right here and try to understand. So as I did for the last time we met in this idea of teaching, studying these teachings, I kind of like to analyze the parties involved outside of the parable. Because sometimes it's a conversation of Jesus with someone else or individuals. And then Jesus comes and interjects kindly to help, obviously. But we'll see that Jesus in the crowd, right? And again, I wanted just to kind of help you guys picture this as, and you can close your eyes. I mean, imagine Jesus next to us, and and people are gathering, people are just mounting on top of the other just to understand or to hear Jesus, right? And it is so much that he kind of takes a step back and say, wait a minute, if I'm here in the middle of everyone, not everyone will be able to hear me. So what does he do? As we can see here, I'm going to jump into the location we have by the lake at the shore. And he moves to a boat where he can see everyone and everyone can see him as well. I'm just kind of looking to, why was this done, right? Was he trying to, put himself in evidence, or, no, I think it was just more in a way to address everyone, kindly address everyone, right? So the parties involved in the parable, the sower, the farmer, right? There's no other really individual that we can point out. And then we go into the elements involved in the parable: the soil, the seed, the path, the birds, the rocks, the sun, the root, thorns, and plants, right? All of these things is important because I, 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 I think it's important for us to connect with all of these elements, as well as to make sure that we are analyzing ourselves as the soil, as the seed, as the path, as the sower. And we will try to do that as well as we get into it a little bit more. Reasons for the discussion, teachings. And when we go back and we analyze it, oh my God, wait a minute. All of these different teachings at the same day for the same crowd? Well, I like to take a step back and say it was not the same crowd, because I'm thinking, a lot of people came in at a specific point of time. Some of them stayed for as long as Jesus was there, or some of them they left. They received what they needed and they left, right? Because not every parable will have the same teachings, right? Even though they are great teachings. As far as the learnings, I'll leave it up to you guys. If we go back, what do you see that you can say, I relate to this? One word, one phrase, and I don't have the microphone because I will have to repeat here so everyone can hear it. Anything that you guys would like to point out. If not, it's okay. We'll continue, and we'll do the same thing at the end. Everybody's quiet. Jeanette was speaking at the last time, right, Jeanette? All right, we keep moving then. All right. So, as I mentioned, this is actually in the chapter 17 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, towards the end of the first part. As you can see there, the characteristics in this chapter, it Kardec covers the characteristic of perfection, moral persons, and good spirits. And obviously comes the parable of the sower. The second part, which is of this chapter, which is always in every chapter, Kardec does the same, is to bring the spiritist teachings, right? These are spirits that comes and gives a message that will be complementing the teachings that he bring forth, and talking about duty, virtue, superiors and subordinates, the individual in the world. It's interesting that it was placed in this chapter because it comes right after Kardec is addressing the characteristics of perfection, moral persons, and good spirits as well. And we can dive into that in another time, but I just want to also call the attention to why the parable was placed towards the end, because usually these parables as well in these chapters, they're placed at the beginning of the gospel according to Spiritism, right? But it seems to me that is, again, a node reminder saying, look, if you have ears to hear, let's do it, right? And bring it to heart, right? Again, a reminder, an old reminder that is, we have been, God already presented this to us, right? And I want to say this so that we bring everything under the umbrella of God, right? Because God is not presenting him or herself in front of me saying, do this, right? But it's through people, through teachings, through pain sometimes, right? And we don't learn. We don't pay attention, right? But let's continue a little bit more. So, who does the sower represent for us? What is the main thing that comes to mind, and when we look at the sower, when we read this passage? God, right? He is the sower, bringing the what? What does the seed represents? The word of God, right? It's a no-brainer because we look at it. Well, hopefully it isn't, but hopefully this is just a reminder, right? And what does the soil represent to us? It's us, you and I. As Carbasciuto also tells us, is our intellectuality, as well as our morality in terms of how we receive the seed, how we receive the word of God, right? And we see these different levels where we are. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong to see how we look at certain individuals excelling in life, and I'm not saying physically, monetarily speaking, but in terms of the message of God, right? The idea of love God above all things and treat your neighbor as you wish to be treated. That is the main thing, the core that we're talking about in terms of how we address this need inside of us, right? And then obviously with our brothers and sisters. So I want to also jump ahead of me to also help you. Can the sower be one of us? Can we be sowers? Yeah, through examples. But can we also pass it along what we receive? Yes, we can, right? Okay. Birds are doing that all the time. They take the seed, they eat something, and they're gonna drop the seed someplace else, right? Right? Bees, right? And pollinating, do whatever they have to do. So it's important for us to also address this, and this is something I was going to keep to the end, but first to also start thinking about it as we were reading, because we're going to reread again the parable. For it's like, what is my part on this idea of being the sower, right? Sometimes we can be the seed, right? But most importantly, we are the soil on how we're receiving things, right? How our acceptance to what we're receiving. Then it comes the second part. This parable is so interesting because it has an explanation, right? Now, mind you, just to create some suspense here, look what I'm addressing here. Matthew chapter 13, verses 1 through 9. Now, look where we are now. This will all make sense. We jump from 9 through 18 in terms of the verses. So there's something in between. So once more, I'll just to show, hopefully I'm in the right place there. Yes, I am. The computer now is talking to me. Matthew 13, 1 through 9. Right? So we go now straight into verse 18. So what happened between 9 and 17? Just a question. Let's just make it a parenthesis. Let's keep with us, and we're going to talk about it later as well. So the second part is just straight through, just saying, here's explanation of it, right? And we can actually go to the other gospels too, and we will see the same thing. Listen then to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The seed falling on rocky grounds refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the world, they quickly fall away. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop yielding 160 or 30 times what was sown. That's it. We can stop right here and say, I have the explanation, I have what it takes, and we can just multiply it, right? Be the one who receives it and then multiply it, right? So, is it easy that way? No, not at all. Not even me reading this is like, wow, man, I received so many times and I don't get it yet, and I'm far from it. And I think that's the beauty, right? When that's one of the beauties of life, that when we read these things and when we are in contact with this again, that we place ourselves humbly to say, I need to revisit this more often, right? We need to have more conversation about this parable, and others too, obviously, but for us to remind ourselves that we need to do more. Because when we look at the each of these passages, right, we can find ourselves in there. And now we'll give ourselves an example, um, right there, as we discuss them line by line. Again, this is on chapter 5. I'm sorry, chapter 17, item 5 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. So, what I did here, as you can see, is to take each of the passage of the actual parable and bring the explanation right after. And we're going to talk about it. Think about examples, perhaps, that we can present to ourselves, and later on, if you're, with your partner, with, a family member, whoever, or even by yourself, that, you can kind of reflect about a moment of your life that you were in a situation like this. You were the good soil or the bad soil, right? Because this is meant for a reflection, a self-reflection as well, and where we are in order for us to grow, right? So a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate up. Explanation from this last part that we read. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. Have we ever been in a situation? I'll give you an example, and this is a personal example that I was thinking. When we're watching a movie, right, or when we're listening to a song, right, sometimes we're so down that even if we're listening to a really nice song, something that really cheers people up, we listen to it and it's like, whatever, right? Or sometimes we watch a movie and it's like, this is supposed to be a funny movie, right? I love comedy, stupid comedy. It's just something to make me laugh, to get my mind out of it. But there are moments that you watch it and you're like, okay. And you watch it again maybe 2 months from now when everything's fine, you have no worries. Well, I don't know. We always have worries. I shouldn't say that. We're always, really worried about something. But again, you laugh, right? You're able to laugh. You break a laugh and you're happy about it, right? It's the same thing with the message. Sometimes we're so worried about life, or even if, especially for the things that we have no control, and we come to the center and we listen to something, it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. And then you talk to other people that also listen to the same message, and they're like, wow, I can't believe this was perfect. It really helped my day, right? Because we are so, again, tied up with our problems that it bears no fruit. Nothing happens. The seed was thrown, but us, the soil, does not accept, right? And it happens. It's okay. It's meant for us not to be scared, to be worried to a certain degree, but for us to pay attention and do the best that we can with these explanations. There's more. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, The plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Explanation. The seed, and again, this is not Leo's explanation, this is the actual part of the parable too. The seed falling on rocky grounds refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy, but since it had no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. Here on the idea of the rocky ground, I like to add on top of what is saying here, that it's very easy for us to uproot or take something from the ground that hasn't a good root, right? It's funny enough that this week I was actually seeding the yard last Sunday, and I was thinking about this as well as I was doing. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like so interesting that and this is the first time that I have actually done this in my yard. But you see that there are certain things that you have to take it out of the ground before you seed, so that is not growing and whatnot. And obviously now with spring things, or things that are not wanted, it will spring as well, will come out. But because it's so small, you can just take it from the ground, right? And this is what happens here when it's rocky. The seed, it will grow. It's much like we're receiving the message. We will do something about it, but then right after, because of the problems of life, the things, the worries, it doesn't grow much. And because it doesn't have any roots, it's not connected. It's not receiving the minerals from the ground. It's not receiving the vitamins, whatever we want to call. The sun comes and does what? And burns everything, right? So again, Jesus using nature to teach us, right? But also, I'd like to add, as I was saying at the beginning, when we start mentioning this part, sometimes our hearts are so rocky, right? We're so stubborn that even pain comes and we don't learn. Even the moments that we are really down, it's like, okay, I cannot even move, breathe, or even pray, right? And we still don't learn because we are solid as a rock, right? Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. So again, it, it's the seed will grow, right? The plant will grow, but it's not going to last. It doesn't last. It's just that that excitement, all those things, the new, right? The good news, to be precise here, the word of God, right? Jesus in our lives. Yeah, and then something happens and we just stop, or this or that excuse, or and we all have our, go through these moments in our lives. Even I like to say, I'll take the liberty to say that sometimes what we regard so much as valuable to us, beyond wealth or what work or whatever it is, family members that do not want to follow this, right? It's hard. It's really hard, but it's a choice that we have to make personally because of our growth. I'll call the attention, for example, of our mentors. Right now, we all believe that we have a mentor. We all believe that we have a guardian angel, right? Can we say that our guardian angel is sitting next to us 24 by 7? Our guardian angels also have their development to be making, right? They have to, even though our well-being, right? And I'm not talking about the again, wealth or anything like that. I'm talking about our moral well-being is part of the development. So if we do develop, they are developing as well, right? It's a consequence. If those around me, they develop, I'm developing as well. I like to think so, right? Much like when I'm happy, hopefully others will be happy as well. So we have the responsibility and we cannot run from it, right? That's why we live in society. That's why there's a father, a mother, there's a family, right, that harbors us for a good number of years of our lives, so that we can do the same thing ourselves, right, and do that for others. But when we think about this personal development of our mentors, right? But then we have to say, wait a minute, what about my personal development? What about my personal development? Yes, I am a son, a daughter, husband, wife, right? Cousin, whatever that may be. I'm a co-worker, but I have my development. I can the whole day of my life at work attending the needs of everyone else. I have to take a moment and I have to take my training. And God knows if we don't take our training at work, guess what? Especially when you're dealing with laws, right? They're always changing. You have to be on part of it because if I don't do that self development, I'm not going to be able to develop others. So this is important for all of us because when we're talking about the seed and we're talking about the soil, we're also talking about self development, right? So it's important for us to take the step back and say, wait a minute, yes. All right, if you don't want to hear it, I don't want to be that individual, right? Because I think we already have these examples in our lives. Bad example. Still, other seed fell on good soil where it produced a crop of 160 or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. I want to take a step back here also before we go on and point out this part of it because it's not all about bad things, right? It's not about the individuals that are not listening or us when we're not listening, right? Because there are a lot of things that each one of us, if we were to, open the discussion here, and even though I don't like to talk about myself, and I know people are very private as well, but we have things that we do extremely well, right? Jeanette have great things that she likes to do. Vladimir that he does well as well. Louise, you that I cannot do yet, and yet it is a representation of the seed, taking the seed and multiplying, right? That yet, I mean, if we were to compare with one another, and I know many of us don't like the idea of comparison when it's detrimental, obviously it's not good, but we need to do that sometimes. I always like to use the analogy if I can do it, you can do it as well. And if you can do it, guess what? I'm going to put myself to the task as well. It may not be the same, but we can do it. We can do it. Despite our difficulties, yes, I'm not going to be a what was the name of the swimmer again? Michael Phelps. Thank you. I'm not going to be Michael Phelps, but guess what? I will. I can learn. I can learn how to swim. I will be able to go from one end to the pool to the other. I guarantee we can. Each one of us will be able to do that, right? Crawling, just very slow, but we can do that as well. So, what is the explanation? But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understand it. This is the one who produces a crop yielding 160 or 30 times what was sown. The mothers, the fathers, right? Us, good workers with one another at work. When we take that moment and say, yeah, you know what? I was asked to walk a mile, but I'm going to walk two miles, right? I was asked to give my head, but I'm going to give my jacket as well, right? It's multiplying those teachings. Is it every time? No. It's like me talking to my dog, right? He hears once, and then the second time I say it, he just walks away, right? It's like, wait a minute, you did so well the first time, But we do that, right? We do that. We apply it so well, right? And then we're like, oh, okay. And then we have to have these reminders, these things that we present to one another to remind ourselves that we can do it, right? So I'd like to add ourselves to this passage, to this part as well, because this is not meant to present only the negative. I think that as a society, as a whole, we should have done this more often than not. We can do this more often than not. Um, it's kind of late, right? Because when we look at it and we take a step back, not in a negative way, and we analyze what's going on with the world right now, um, we quite sure that we all think that things should be in a better position right now, right, in the world. But kind of giving away a little thing here. um, this is the a good reminder for all of us that when we put these two passages together, one complementing the other, right, and then and helping us analyze what the master was trying to say. But I repeat again. Now I put it together so you can see it. Chapter 13, from verses 1 to 9, and then the second part is 13 verses 18 to 23. So there is a gap. So what happens on this gap? This is one of the reasons why Kabashuta actually emphasizes, and unfortunately the book is not in English, hopefully soon to be, um, because he's very direct, very interesting. The way he approaches these teachings is very, it's adamant in a positive way, right? That emphasis to, guys, let's wake up, right? And what is the gap? What is in between? Let's read. The disciples came to him and asked, "Why do you speak to people in parables?" In Mark, I think, it says, when the disciples were alone with the master, then they came and they asked. So I don't think that, let's say, the it could have happened that the disciples, they jumped on the boat and say, "Master, master, why do you speak in parables?" I think it could have happened then, but as I mentioned at the beginning, Jesus was teaching. He just kept going and going and going. So I don't think there was a moment for them to go to the boat, ask this question, come out of it, and then he would continue. Could have happened. Again, I'm just going back to the moment to analyze this. But why does in Matthew and Mark as well, I don't remember Luke, sorry, but in the two gospels there is this interjection in between the parable and the explanation. And then let's just go along with the flow and hear what Jesus said. Because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heavens has been given into you, but not to them. Whoever has will be giving more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. This is why I speak to them in parables. Though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand. We can go into the idea of, okay, wait a minute, what they don't have, they're not going to be taken from them. Well, if we don't, more will be taken from them. Well, if we receive something and we don't really give much to it, much importance to it, is somebody taking that from you, or you yourself not really utilizing, i.e., you're pushing away? Think about it. We can interpret in different ways, right? It's just it's not important to you. So it was never next to you, right? If we're not giving it importance. And I dare to say as well, even when the seed is being thrown right in our faces, right? Something that is, let's call an enemy, for lack of better words. Sometimes, using the word enemy is kind of hard, especially in this setting. But even somebody who doesn't like us, when they throw something in our faces, right? And sometimes it has to be that way for us to really get that hit and say, wait a minute, maybe this is true, right? And nothing happens. We don't even take the moment to say, is the person really right about this? Am I being rude, or am I being egotistic? Whatever the person was saying. What are the foundation for that person to say such a thing, right? And sometimes we don't pay attention to it. We just leave it alone. And sometimes we have to do that, right? Sometimes we have to do that. But there are two things that can happen when somebody throws something in our faces, right? That seed that is just even hurt the eye, right? Either you will come out of the situation extremely strong, right? Saying that, what, I was correct from the beginning, right? It makes no sense what the person was saying. Or sometimes you say, wow, maybe if I make that little change that I need to make, I'll be a better person. So it's a win-win situation. There's nothing wrong to it. But it goes back to what he continues and say, in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing but never understanding. You will be ever seeing but never perceiving. For this people's heart have become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. Where was this? Isaiah 6, 9 through 10. So Jesus, again, is coming back and saying to us the same thing, right? Repeating the message to us. And that's why, I like to say that Kaibashuto brings to us as one of the most important messages in the gospel. It's a repetition. It's something that has been brought to us. And when we think about the first revelation as we studying Spiritism, right? Moses bringing all these teachings, right? And did we learn? No. And then Jesus comes. Did we learn? No. And what is Jesus being the second revelation? What is the third revelation? As we learn through the spirits, Spiritism. And have we learned? We're trying. As long as we try, right? That is a good answer. I like that as well. Because the truth of the matter is, if for us to say, from now on, everything will be perfect, it won't, right? We cannot say such a thing. It's just, it would be a fallacy for us to say, from now on, it's going to be perfect. It won't. But are we trying? Are we truly giving ourselves the capability to say, today I tried my best, right? So it's really tough. So on that note, let us then talk about the third revelation, right? How can we apply this with Spiritism? Where is this message within Spiritism, right? On item 6, we will see that the parable of the sower, as we have mentioned here, represents perfectly the nuances that exist in the ways one profits from the teachings of the gospel. How many people there are, in fact, from whom the gospel teachings are only a dead letter which, like the seed that has fallen on the stony soil, produces no crop. We already solved this here. The actual explanation of the parable tells us that, right? We receive it, but we produce nothing. We don't produce anything. Or if we produce, it's just that moment, and then it dies. And then it happens again, and it dies. It happens again, and it goes on and on and on. And it's not bad. It's just that, perhaps we're still vibrating in that way until we finally develop enough roots that we can go ahead and be that nice plant or tree, or that will eventually then bear fruits as well, right? This parable finds no less correct application in different categories of spirits. Is it not a symbol of those who are interested only in the physical phenomena, but derive nothing of consequence from them because they see them as nothing more than an object of curiosity? Many people come to the Spiritist Center. They don't verbalize it. People don't say it. Excuse me. But they're looking for that a excitement of seeing mediumistic representations, right? Whether is a message, whether it is there are mediums as well that they produce beautiful paintings and whatnot, doing different things, and we look at it as like, is that the only thing that you come to the Spiritist Center for? Because if it is, we can find this elsewhere too, right? So we have to take the idea of mediumistic meanings, mediumistic works, and look on all of this right here, because most of them, 90% of them, they're work of mediumship. When we sit down to study a book, guess what? André Luiz, mediumistically brought by Chico Xavier, right? And if we look at just the actual mediumistic phenomena, and we lose the message, it's not going to happen. The second part of this message right here, of this chapter right here, all brought by spirits. Lacordaire, many others that came and gave beautiful messages, and we look at it, it's like, okay, whatever, right? Of those who seek nothing but the wonder in spirit communications, who are interested in them only to the extent that they satisfy their imagination, but who, after having received them, are as cold and indifferent as they were in the first place. Of those who find the counsels to be very good and admirable, yet apply them only to others and not to themselves. Very interesting as well, because sometimes we like to be the sower, directed some people, and we were throwing the seeds, right? Here's it. Here's, multiplying now. Well, guess what? It doesn't work that way. And of those, finally, from whom the teachings are like the seed that fall on good soil and yields a crop. So these are questions that is, being brought to us, so that we can say, where am I on this? Where's Leo in relation to accepting being the good soil for the first revelation, the second revelation, as well as the third revelation, right? What am I producing? And it's not to say that, yeah, I'm going to do great things right now. But when we're at home, when we're at work, when we're at the Spirit Center is easy because we're in a watch mode, right? If I'm not a good guy right now, people are looking at me, right? I'm giving a talk today. I have to be a good person, right? It's very easy, right? But what if we are, utilizing these teachings to apply everywhere we go? At the store when we're buying something, most of the time when things are not going our way, right? That we have to take a step back and at least accept. It's very hard. It's extremely hard to be this good soil, right? We will most of the time be the rocky soil. To finalize, as I was mentioning, I should have brought this at the beginning so you guys can see the illustration and the name as well. Parables and Teachings of Christ. This is the book right here that I was referring to. And Kaibashuto says two things at the end. Spiritism, philosophy, science, religion, regardless of any and all sectarism, is the doctrine that best puts up to date with all these dictates because alongside the salutary teachings, it enhances human survival, the immovable basis of the real belief that perfect, correct, and bring happiness. And it's very interesting that towards the end, he says perfect, correct, and bring happiness, right? We are perfecting ourselves. Most of the time we're correcting, as if we're correcting, we're perfecting ourselves. But he emphasizes the both there, and bring happiness. It's the only way for us to be happy, because through Spiritism we will see, and he says philosophy, science, religion, right? Without the sectarian ideals of the past that we have. When I say the past, the different religions that we have seen it, right? That there is one person that can go ahead and be the sower, the priest, this or that individual, right? But we can all be the sowers. That's why I said at the beginning, we can all be the sowers. We can all take this message, and even though we're not an individual who is practicing this all the time, we can multiply it. In the moment of pain, someone else's pain, we can come and say, let's read a passage of the Bible. It can be a good sower. Or let me listen to what the person have to say. Countless time that we can be that good sower, and we're not, right? So it's important for us to take a step back and what is Spiritism offering me? It offers this, that we can take the message and say, I don't have to be endowed of great learnings or have a title of this or that. I can go ahead and multiply this. The message in itself, just repeat it, read it and repeat it to somebody. Maybe it will have a greater effect on that individual than it had on us. Yet we're still multiplying, right? Because we're separating ourselves with that idea that it has to be a personal title, it has to be this, has to be that, right? And then we can see this as well in Jesus' legacy, as far as who did he call to be the multipliers of the message? They were not enlightened individuals. If we were to connect with the Peter before Jesus, right, before he met Jesus, I'm assuming that he would be very rude, extremely rude, right? But after, right, So much so, and I say this with my heart, so much so that even knowing Jesus, he denied him 3 times. So think about it. Was he a very good individual? No, much like us. What about the others? I'll take you to a pivotal moment of Jesus' legacy, as I mentioned, right? When he was being crucified. Was anybody there? Only one. John. Only one. Everybody else, they were afraid. What kind of ground were they at that time, right? It's hard to, when we put these things in perspective, obviously there are two outcomes, at least for me. It's like, wow, we're much like them, right? Because they were with the master. They lived with him. They 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 jumped on that boat to ask him a question, right? They ate with him. They had great moments with him, right? And yet they were not there because they were afraid. And how many times we don't hide our situations because we don't want to deal with it, right? But we look back and say, wow, but they also got better. They became better individuals, right? They grew with their sufferings because I'm quite sure after the ascendance of Christ, they went back and say, what's going to happen to us now? Well, guess what? Let me put myself through work, right? So there's always a good family member that calls when we're going through this. So sorry. Um, a child of God, right? Sorry. Usually I don't have it, but anyways. But it's important for us to kind of really put this in perspective because it also helps us to be more kind to ourselves and saying, I'm not perfect yet. I'm far from it, but now I know better, right? He finalized by saying, may its followers, us, Spiritism, followers of Spiritism, convinced of the duties they assumed, similar to the sower, take homes and all homes and sow in all hearts the seed of faith that saves, raising high that light of the gospel, hidden under a bushel of dogmas and the false teachings that have so much harmed humanity. And he says this because in the middle of his explanation of this parable, he actually takes the time to reminds us that sometimes we take the message and we put so many clauses into it, for lack of better words, so many things on it that instead of helping people, it creates more chaos. The message sometimes stays the same, right? But we create so much craziness around the message that it creates more hurt than help people, right? And we got to be careful with that, right? I'll give an example. In Spiritism, we hear all the time, what's going on, with you right now is because you did this, or that in the past. Or sometimes it even makes worse. It's because of your past. Oh my God. It's because of your past. And we say that the person's like, wow, thank you for making my life even worse now, right? Because we don't know. We don't know. Maybe the person asked to go through this, so much so that he says, convinced of the duties they assumed. We assume, right? Sometimes it could have been something that I asked to go through in this lifetime, right? And we look at these things that we go through, or other people, because we like to apply these teachings to other people, not to us. And we say, you see, I told you, right? It's something from the past. Well, if it is, so be it, right? We have messages coming through the mediumistic meeting, sometimes spirits coming to us and saying, it's just like the movie, right? It's like, I see, like, what is the movie again? I see, no, I know what you did last summer, right? Isn't that I know what you did last summer? I was like, well, yeah, I mean, yes, I committed an error. I did something wrong. Yes, we're all growing, right? As you said, Johnny, we're trying, right? And the spirit comes and they really, really applying the whip on us. Thanks for reminding me. Guess what? I'll be more, more careful next time. But why are you here, right? And why are we together, right? So it's important for us to look at these things and really be careful, please be careful. If anything, I would like to ask, be careful when we're applying spiritism in our lives, especially towards others, because it can be really harmful. Not to the individual, because we pretty much, and there was a video that when in one of our group, family groups that we have, somebody analyzed what's going to happen to us after we die, right? That first week, everybody's crying. Second week is this. Second week, people thinking, oh, Leo passed. Okay. A year after, yeah, 1 year anniversary. And then 3 years later, it's like, who's Leo again? Right? But the message will stay. The tainted message will stay. So we have to really be careful that when we're applying spiritism and saying there is a cause and effect, yes. However, we have to be careful with others. There is a cause. We did something wrong, and here we are. Because if I'm reincarnating next to that individual, there is a lesson to be learned as well. We're not perfect, right? Forget about teaching a lesson. Let's learn the lesson first, and then see what we can do, right? So there's so much with this that is that we can go on hours and hours about it. But I want to take a step back, and I want to hear from you guys now. And I want to start from the bottom up. The soil. What we learn in this parable, in terms of the soil, right? Because it's very easy for us to go and put ourselves, well, I shouldn't say easy. Perhaps for some of us could be the worst thing, right? The worst part of it, to put ourselves as the soil, because we don't want to be open. We don't want to be that soft soil, right? We don't want to be the rich soil sometimes to receive the message and multiply it, right? What did we learn in terms of the seed, right? Because we throw the seeds as we're going to be, as we analyze the sower, but we can also be the seed on someone else's soil too. See how things are changing a little bit now as we expand our analysis of the parable, and obviously the sower. What kind of sower are we? Because the message is one, the sower is one, our creator, right? But we are all co-creators, as Aloysio mentioned, right? To a very small degree, but we're a sower as well. So are we doing our part? Can we do better? Right? It's up to you now. I don't have the microphone. I would try to paraphrase what you say. Aloysio is saying always room for improvement. In what area, Aloysio?
Oh.
Well, let's be more specific. Because and I say this, and I don't want to put you on the spot, because when we're looking in terms of being a good soil, let's take it that way, right? There are certain locations in the planet that is extremely, it yields great crops for corn, for example, right? But here, in northern hemisphere, if we try to plant, let's say coconut tree, guess what? It's not going to happen. So the reason I'm saying this is because, the reason I ask is because when we say everywhere, all, guess what? It's not going to happen. So let's bring it back a little bit of business terms right now. When we're at work and we're trying to we create an action plan for our job or for whatever department, whatever we're doing, we're always reminded to apply it or to solve for one thing. I know we know we have a million things that we can get better at, right? See, it was like, and then I was like, wow. I even got scared myself. I forgot to turn everything off, guys, today. Sorry. Anyways, yeah, all the technology, right? So we're trying to get better in a million things. But if we don't start with one, if we don't solve for that crop, right, that is killing that crop, or the crop is not growing, right, that we have in our hands, that's the only thing we can plant at this moment of our lives. Guess what? Nothing's gonna happen. right? That's why I ask not to put it into, because as we look at these things, it's like, yeah, I could be doing a million things, but if we don't start with one, it's not going to happen, right? Whatever seed is thrown there, it's not going to happen. Whatever sower comes and sow it on the soil, it's not going to happen. So it's always good for us to think, what can I get better this year? What can I get better in this month, right? I don't know if you remember we presented here a couple of times, Benjamin Franklin list of virtues. Yeah. He always like put on, had it visible for him to go and and check off. Today I did this. Today, I'm going to get better as it becoming more. I don't know. Name one. Frugality, right? To be more frugal, right? And he went in there and checked. Today I did this. Today I did that. You won't be able to apply everything, or put all your efforts on everything in one day. That's how we learn, little by little. But that's a good point. That's a good idea. Anything else? Anything else that you'd like to share? A moment or a situation, or perhaps a moment that a message was brought to you as a whip instead of a kind seed. Right? It happens. It does happen. Sometimes we are that beautiful sower, right? Any other comments? Anything else that you guys would like to say? All right, so let me see here if there are comments that we can bring it over. And give me 1 second, Daniel. We'll bring to the screen here. So Yasko says, "Hi Leo, I love this parable, but I feel that even knowing Spiritism and trying to follow Jesus' teachings, we badly we're badly sewing between the swing. I'm sorry, we badly swing between the various soils. It is the way we evolve as incarnates in the planet of expiations and trials." Well, that's a question. Yes, Yasko, for sure, and that's why I said, um, and I think the the parable at the end brings the positive as well, right? So to a great extent, we're kind of late on this transition, right? And there's much more that we can do, that we could have done and we can do, but it's part of us. That's why we reincarnated here. We have these oscillations. We go up and down, up and down. Sometimes we think that we learned from the teachings that we have received, and tomorrow something happens, and no, that's why we were reincarnated. That's why we're here. That's why it hurts sometimes, right? Because we think that we free ourselves from some of these sufferings, and that's why Kaibashuto also mentions the idea of happiness, right? The true happiness with Spiritism, because we're being called to apply within ourselves first. It's for us. The message is for us, and I like to put myself into this pot over here because we're presenting this because first of all, this is for me. You know, uh, what we going to do, what you're going to do with the message. I mean, the us here tonight and those who will be watching this, hopefully, will be up to them. I hope that this will have a better impact on your life than it will impact your life, in a good way. But at the end, I have nothing to do, on how we're going to use it. Am I responsible? Yeah, for sure, because I'm presenting it. Hopefully, it was not the crazy sower that threw things at us, right? But it reminds us as well that we have the essence inside of us. Because if it wasn't so, I don't think Jesus had mentioned, the examples, right? And there are great examples of life, including ourselves, that there are some that receives the good seed and multiplies it. Not by 100 sometimes, maybe by a 60, not by 60 sometimes, but maybe 30 times more, right? So it's important for us to do that. I'll show you again. I believe this was Daniel. how can we reconcile with the seeds of hate that we have sowed, even without the intentional to hurt? The intention to hurt, I believe that's what it is. Very good, because this is one of the things that one of the teachings of our Master Jesus as well, right? To treat others as we would like to be treated, right? To forgive, right, as well. And are we applying? No. How do we do it? We just have to put into practice, right? If anything, we are reminded, and I say we, me directly, and I believe a good number of people who live with me directly, by our mentors, because I don't think this is me, that whenever we have an issue with someone, um, we have to remind ourselves that that individual is a son of a daughter of someone. That that individual has a somebody, if anything, if there's no father, no mother, who loves that person, right? And then you start getting closer to that individual, isn't it so? Because now you're humanizing that situation, and this is hard because when the feelings are trying to take over, it's extremely hard to do so. And then you start analyzing, wait a minute, that individual is also a brother or sister. That individual has a job that perhaps is not a good individual. He was not a good individual in that position, but he tries to put some effort, in certain relationships of his or her life, right? Or that person is a husband, a wife, a father, a mother, right? If anything, this person has been one of these things. He did just not pop in the world, right? With that age, because usually we don't get mad at the little kids. Well, sometimes when they're crying, they're doing things that they're not supposed to, but these are individuals or pretty much our age, right? Our in our surroundings, especially family members. With my brother, I'm not going to say that I never had issues with my brothers. We still have. And then I think, wait a minute, my mother is his mother, and my mother likes that individuals as much as we all joke around, oh, that one is the favorite, right? Or then they throw back at you, no, you are the favorite one, right? But when we start doing these things, my wife is pointing at me, you are the favorite. No, I'm not. But when we look at these things, it's like, wait a minute, for the sake of that conditioning or life that has been brought to earth, right? Let us do our part. Now, I'm not here saying that everything will be perfect from now on. Things will be, but at least we take a step back and we don't dislike as much. We don't do things. We don't throw darts or even bad seeds at that person anymore, right? And then things starts dying down. Time is a great healer as well, and helps and comes and gives us the ability to apply what we have learned here. And then little by little, as we become the permeable soil, so will that individual with our conditioning as well, right? So it takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort. uh, um, I believe again it was Daniel that brought this. Hopefully, this helps Daniel. And I know sometimes we make these questions in a general way because we all have our enlightenments inside of us on how to deal with these situations. But at least to me, it helps a little bit. Not perfect yet because there are a lot of things that I need to work at it. So hopefully, this will help. Um, and then Rosada says, thank you, Leo, for this beautiful message. Thanks, Leo. Great presentation. Again, I guess this he was just putting on the general chat. Agnes A, thank you. Very interesting. Great. This is it, folks. This is the the let's call the the core of this message that we can bring to one another. The of this presentation in terms of on how we can apply this. It is a reminder, again, I'll say it again, it is a reminder for all of us to step back and say, wait a minute, the seed has been thrown, right? We know that the message is one, God is one, right? And what kind of soil am I doing this moment? Much like I said at the beginning, there are moments of our lives that we're not even a soil, we're a block of cement, right? We don't want to hear it. We don't want to, receive anything. And then we are called to reality and say, no, well, let me take a step back and see what I can do here, right? And as we do so, as we are that good soil, for sure we will be also, we become automatically that good sower as well. Because people look at us and say, well, you know what? If he can do it, if she can do it, I can do it too, right? And we become example. Hopefully, after that 3 years that I mentioned after we die, right? But yeah, you know what? Leo did this exactly. You know what? Maybe I can do that too. You know what I'm saying? We'll feel it on the other side that we also multiplied, right, by one person or two individuals. We often in Spirit to Center we look at it and say, oh, how many people are coming? How many people are doing this? And and we remind ourselves, right? If the person received the message and left, hopefully they're at this point a better father, better mother, a better brother, better sister, right? They don't have to come over here all the time. It's nice to engage in the work to do certain things, but it's really up to us to do our part. So with that, we would like to finalize this by saying thank you for all of those following us to the web as well. Something that I forgot to say at the beginning of the message, and for us over here, not only for those online who will be following us online, but those here as well, go back to whatever social media you're part of it, because this is actually online through YouTube, through Facebook as well. Put your likes in there, subscribe as well, because it's important. Not because of me, not because of the SSB, to make any money or anything like that, but the more we do, guess what? The better will be the message will be spread, right? The not only my talks, any of the talks, what I try to do when I'm here as well, listening to someone else, I'll try to log in real quick, right? At the end, and put my like on it, and then make sure that I'm subscribed with all these channels and many other spirited centers as well. But it's important for us to multiply the message that way. Be the good sower, right? Always be the good sower. So thank you. And at this moment, we bid farewell to everyone. All right. Let's